Think about how you were taught to see numbers. In school, they were cold, mechanical, stripped of any life. Add, multiply, memorize formulas, nothing more than exercises without soul. The more you practiced, the more lifeless they became, like repetitive clicks of a machine that never changed. But what if I told you that, in ancient times, numbers weren't seen as dead? They were alive. Keys, portals, instruments capable of revealing the very structure of reality itself. To the ancients, numbers had personality, vibration, essence. They weren't simply written on a board, they were experienced as forces shaping the cosmos. What you call math today was once considered a sacred path. And the man who carried this vision was Pythagoras, not only a mathematician, but a mystic, an initiate, and the founder of a secret school that saw numbers as the living language of consciousness. Where modern math ends in equations, Pythagoras began with revelation. His numbers didn't end in answers, they opened into mysteries. Here lies the rupture. If the modern school system trains for obedience, the Pythagorean school trained for awakening. If the classroom made you repeat, Pythagoras asked you to perceive. And perception, unlike repetition, changes everything. Few people know this, but Pythagoras founded an initiatory community. His students didn't just learn formulas, they underwent rites of passage, vows of silence, and disciplines for both mind and body. It was less a school and more a temple, a place where every lesson was sacred, every number an initiation. Mathematics wasn't about solving problems. It was about perceiving patterns. Each number carried soul, vibration, essence. The classroom wasn't filled with noise, but with silence, the kind of silence that opens doors to perception. The number 1 was the unity of the cosmos. The 2 was duality. The 3, harmony. The 4, manifestation. The 7, spiritual completion. Each number wasn't memorized. It was lived. It was meditated upon. It was embodied. This was not memorization. It was perception. To cross the threshold of the numbers was to discover how matter and consciousness are woven together into the same universal code. The curriculum was not made of textbooks, but of symbols, and the reward was not a grade, but transformation. This was education not as obedience, but as initiation. Not the suppression of individuality, but the awakening of essence. Not the repetition of the known, but the opening to the eternal. For Pythagoras, geometry was a bridge. The triangle was not just a form, it was harmony. The circle was not just a drawing, it was eternity. The golden ratio was not just beauty, it was the signature of creation. Every shape you see today on a chalkboard once carried divine weight. Numbers, he said, were not human inventions. They existed before us, and we merely discovered them. Like antennas tuning into invisible frequencies, humans could align with this code and perceive the structure of existence itself. Modern science now confirms parts of this. Physics, biology, fractals in nature, all governed by mathematical codes. DNA spirals, galaxies spin, shells grow, all in proportion to hidden numbers. What you thought was random is in fact organized. What you thought was chaos hides order. Pythagoras had already intuited it. Reality is mathematical at its root. But not the dead math of school. The living math, the one that touches the soul. The math that doesn't just solve, but reveals. Now compare this to what we live today. The math we were taught is sterile, fragmented, disconnected from life. You repeat exercises, memorize for tests, and forget immediately after. Every number on the blackboard feels empty, a code without meaning, a burden instead of a key. No teacher told you that numbers were sacred, that the shapes you doodled in your notebook were the same ones that organize galaxies, rivers, and even your body. Instead, you were told to calculate faster, to memorize longer, to conform more tightly to the invisible prison of the curriculum. What Pythagoras saw as a portal, the modern system turned into a prison. What was once initiation became bureaucracy. What was once expansion became repetition. You weren't initiated into mysteries, you were trained to obey. And that contrast is the key. Because if the system buried the sacred, then it's up to you to uncover it. If the system reduced numbers to dead symbols, then it's up to you to resurrect their life. The secret didn't disappear. It was simply hidden in plain sight. On one side, the blackboard of the Prussian school, rigid, uniform, designed to limit. On the other, the Pythagorean triangle, proportion, harmony, expansion. Two different images, two different futures. Two symbols, two paths, two destinies. One reduces you to a dead number, tracked, measured, and boxed in. The other reveals you as a living number, part of the rhythm of the cosmos. One silences your perception. The other awakens it. And the question is unavoidable. Which symbol defines your life? Do you live inside the blackboard, the grid of obedience? Or do you expand through the triangle, the map of the infinite? If Pythagoras were alive today, he wouldn't tell you to memorize formulas. He would tell you to observe patterns, to see rhythm in music, to see symmetry in plants, to see proportion in the simplest gestures of life, to rediscover in your own heartbeat the code of existence. The math that liberates is not the one you learned on the blackboard. It's the one you feel pulsing in your body, in your breath, in the very structure of reality. It's the math that doesn't enslave, but awakens. Observe, everything has rhythm. Ask, what numbers are shaping my life? Remember, numbers aren't cold, they are alive. See, each proportion is a doorway, each harmony a revelation. Your rebellion doesn't require destruction. It requires perception. And once you perceive, you cannot unsee. Pythagoras left us a forgotten legacy. A code of liberation hidden in something you were told was nothing but calculation. But for him, it was the secret language of the universe. And for you, it may be the forgotten key you were always looking for. The modern system turned math into a prison. But Pythagoras revealed it as a portal. One locks you into obedience. The other opens you into awakening. And maybe, just maybe, right now, you're beginning to remember. It's not that numbers control your mind. It's that through them, you can awaken to what has always been beyond it. Welcome to Fragments of Reality.